Okay, now it's better. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are live right now on the YouTube channel, and we should be starting the program just in 1 minute. I'll give more. There are a number of people are still joining, and hopefully in next 5 to 10 minutes, we have a good attendance to watch on YouTube. Thank you very much, all of you. This is our 12th anniversary of Whitehorse Conference. A number of years ago, when we started the initiative by introducing the interfaith dialogue in Whitehorse, Yukon, and tremendous success and support by the local community encouraged us to continue this mission. That today we are hosting 12th anniversary of our program. So I'm very happy and I'm very much thankful to all of you to becoming a family. That's what it's all about, that we are united, we can understand each other, and we can promote the harmony and bring something good for the people of the many cities that we have launched this program. So at one time, we was also hosting a program in Dawson City. So we did 4 events in Dawson City. We did number of events in Inuvik, one event in Tuktoyaktuk in Northwest Territory. So we have gone many cities, and our the neighbor community, which is Alberta, they're still hosting the event in Yellowknife. And so all those good work is done to bring that understanding that we enjoy today, love for all, hatred for none. This is what we promote, and this is what we pride of that. So I'm very happy. I'm very much thankful to Stuart Clark for a number of years as a chair of Interfaith Society. His tremendous help as really appreciated by the community, and personally me, who struggled so much sometime to finding a speaker, moderator, and then promote the event and see a good turnout. So by the grace of God, United Church and Reverend Beverly cooperation, made that possible, that every time in person when we hosting program, we have very good attendance, and people really enjoy an event. And as Mr. Stuart Clark said, they enjoy food also, which his smiles give us positive message. So thank you much, all of you. We welcome to you on Zoom channel and YouTube. We are starting this event right now. I'm very much thankful to all those who are supporting this event for a number of years, especially now online program. At this time, I know that from Toronto, a number of people are watching the program, and some executive member of our community also. I also know for a number of city from Chicago, from Los Angeles, from South America, Guyana, and many cities of Canada are watching this program because I have shared this link wherever is possible for me. So I really very much thankful to all of them. Those are giving their precious time to us. So with this small notes, we should be starting the program right now. Tradition of our community to start with the prayer. I request Mr. Naveed Mirza, youth president of our local chapter here, to do the praying ceremony.
Assalamu alaikum. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon all of us today. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. I seek refuge from Satan the cursed, in the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. All praise belong to Allah, Lord of all the worlds, the gracious, the merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment. Thee alone do we worship, and Thee alone do we implore for help. Guide us in the right path, the path of those on whom Thou hast bestowed Thy blessings, those who have not incurred Thy displeasure, and those who have not gone astray. Amen.
Thank you very much for recitations from the Holy Quran. Now, we have to request our regional president, Mr. Naeem Ahmed Lakhan, to give us introductory remarks.
You're muted, Naeem.
Okay, now I'm good.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the gracious, merciful. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. May peace and blessings be on you. We are very fortunate that we live in a country and a society where different faiths can get together and present the point of view peacefully and respectfully. This aspect of our Canadian society is highly praiseworthy and worth celebrating. On behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I welcome you all to this annual Interfaith event. Today's event is a continuation of an initiative taken by the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, may peace be on him. It was in 1895 when he invited the representative of all the major faiths for an interfaith conference in his hometown of Qadian in India. The major objective of this interfaith dialogue or interfaith conference is that each faith should have an opportunity to present the beauties and the salient points of his or her faith. The conversation regarding various faiths can provide us with a new perspective and can make us more insightful to the world around us. As we know, the guidelines of this event restrict the presenters from criticizing any other faith. So the presenters are requested just to give their own faith's perspective and then leave it to the audience if they want to draw any conclusions or comparisons or takeaways. So that is the major objective of this interfaith dialogue, is that everybody should be given an opportunity. You know, many of us do not normally get a chance to know about other faiths from their own reliable sources. We hear many things in media and other sources, but it's a rare opportunity to get to the reliable source. So I believe that that's the special opportunity tonight, and I'm looking forward to an exciting and informative evening. And thank you very much for your time and effort for attending this annual Interfaith conference in Whitehorse. May Allah have mercy on all of you, and may God bless all of you. Ameen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Regional President of Ahmadiyya Muslim Community, British Columbia. Now, the next is I should be introducing a moderator, and then all up to moderator to start the programs. The time limit he has set 8 minutes for every speaker. Please comply that. One thing that's very important in our conference is that purpose of these conferences are to spread harmony. We request all the speakers to comply that statement that we have provided to moderator, and I request all to read the guideline of the World Religion Conference that we provided him earlier. With that, he should be starting the program and introducing each speaker. First, let me introduce our very good friend, Mr. Stuart Clark. Stuart Clark is a member of Whitehorse United Church. Prior to coming to Whitehorse in 2012, he co-led an Anabaptist church in Winnipeg that was a part of the historic Peace Church movement. He will speak about practical pathways to peace of the Mennonites, where the ideas come from and how they are actually lived out in the practice. He will also reflect on building a pathway to peace in Whitehorse. So with this a small introduction of Mr. Stuart Clark, a good friend, a loving personality, and very fond of interfaith dialogue, I request him to start formally program.
Well, I want you all to be reassured that I am also not going to be speaking. I suspect this is introductory notes from perhaps a previous year. But anyway, it's good to be with you. Good evening to our audience online, and particularly to our 8 speakers. I want to start out by acknowledging that this event, which is mostly taking place in Whitehorse, is on the traditional territory of the Kwanlundun First Nation and the Tahan Kwachan Council. Our discussion this evening comes at a difficult time. Perhaps for those born after the Second World War, the most difficult period in our lives. It is easy to feel overwhelmed and then to turn off all media, to ignore the sound and fury and the rapid pace of change. Yet to ignore the pain of those around us and those far away seems to make us less human. Tonight, we'll ask the question, how do we find strength in the midst of all this adversity? This, of course, is not the first time humanity's faced adversity, and all the religious traditions have sought to answer this question. So whether your own path is along one of these paths that you'll be hearing about this evening, or simply your own path, listen up while our 8 speakers share their answers. So I'd like to start out by introducing our first speaker this evening. And I must say I had to amend my notes, many of them not quite right. But what is right is that we have with us this evening Phil Gattensby, or as he's known locally, Phil G. Phil is a Tlingit and a member of what is incorrectly called the Carcross-Tagish First Nation. He's also a respected contributor to previous world religion conferences. He works as a counselor, a healer, and a public speaker, both here and across North America and Europe. Phil will provide a First Nations perspective to the question this evening. Welcome, Phil, and over to you.
Thank you, Stu. I'm grateful to be here today. I'm honored to be here and to share with you. I thought a lot about what the title was, right? About adversity, and I thought about Tlingit people, and I thought about the residential school, and I thought about the struggles that we've gone through. And I thought about my grandmother and how she was born in the bush, and how she was basically forced to speak another people's language and to live in another person's world where she certainly wasn't considered an equal. I thought about a lot of things. Like I thought about my own experience and my experience in the school and at the hands of people who, call themselves believers, religion, different religions. And my experiences, some were pleasant, but there was a lot more unpleasant. But I remember at one point for myself, just being somewhere where I went off into the woods by myself, and I came to a small lake. And in the lake, when I was there, I was by myself, but in the lake, I could feel what I thought was God. I could feel it there, right? It was so incredible, that sense. And I spoke out loud and I said, I know you're here, but I'm in this place where people tell me all these things. And I said, I'm confused and I don't understand. So I said, I'm not going to believe anything that they tell me. I said, what I'm going to do is I'll wait for you, right? You tell me. You tell me what you want. I said, I'm going to follow it then. I'm going to believe you. And from that point, I decided not to, follow what people were telling me, because I often found that people said, we're right, those guys are wrong. We're the right way though. And it happened in a few different groups that I went into, different schools that I went into. And so I didn't believe in anything like that. And I went after residential school. My life was, really violent. I danced with drugs and alcohol. I was, a lost soul, so to speak, right? But there came a point where I had a realization, and that in that realization, I tried to figure out what made me see the world in the way that I see it, and I basically came to the point where I asked myself, is this God, right? Is this God like this helping me to see this? And I said to myself, if this is you, I said, this is you and you're doing this, I'm listening, right? You tell me what you want me to do, I'm going to do it. Whatever you say, I'm going to do it, right? Just tell me. And this voice said to me, if you want to be what I want you to be, then be yourself, because that's what I made. And I realized that, that in my whole life, I had no idea who that was, who myself was. And so I just started to look, right? I don't belong to any particular group. I follow the path of my ancestors. I follow a cultural based path. When my ancestors lived in harmony with all of creation, where they saw the life of all things. They saw the same water in the animals that was inside of us, the same fire that was inside of us, same life force. They saw the sameness in everything, and they had deep, deep relations. And I sat there and I thought about, just how it must have been amazing to live and to walk through the forest, having this deep knowing how connected you were with every single thing, every berry, every medicine, every tree, everything, and the great mystery, the creator. And I remember sitting and thinking to myself, I wonder if you could ever get back to that place again. I wonder if we as human beings could ever come back to that place. And this voice in my head, just as crystal as could be, said, you were never separate. And it really, really shifted something inside of me to realize that I've always been part of this. I've always been incredibly connected. And so what I realize now is I have a relationship with the Creator. I have a relationship with it, and it's what changed my life of adversity, right? I just recently came to a place where somebody was just talking about, how just a rough part of his life and struggled, and it made me think about how you see things, right? The eyes through which you see the world, or the brain through which you can, perceive the world. And when I said to him, I've developed this relationship with God, right? And I attribute everything to God. And I find myself sometimes just attributing the good stuff to God, and the bad stuff, the other guy done that, right? But I realized, and I said to him, because he said, well, how come you don't struggle with these things? And I said, it's because I attribute everything to God, right? I said, I spent my whole life looking for a miracle, and I realized the whole time I've been in one, and I am one. It's here, and all I have to do is look, and in a moment I can see it if my eyes look the right way. And so I wanted to, for me, it's good to belong to a group, and good to walk in the same path. And it's good for us to gather together like this, and to join our hearts together, because our hearts are from the same being, right? Our hearts are from the same, right? It's the same creator, no matter which way we call it. I imagine creator must have millions of names, but it's the same one. And I what really for me is in the heart of adversity. That's really what keeps me grounded. I remember being in Walmart this last Christmas, it was kind of chaos, right? It was my favorite shopping day, the 24th of December. And it was just like a tornado inside there of people, right? And my son looked at me and he said, Dad, he said, how can you be so calm? And I said, son, I said, how that hurricane is, how it's just this crazy wind that just blows around. But I said, at the center of that hurricane is dead calm. I said, that's where I live. That's where I want to be. And so for me, that's my thing. If we could attribute all things to the Creator, to the great mystery, and recognize that's the absolute truth of it. So for me, that's what it is. I've committed myself to do work for the Creator, and I've been doing it for 40 years. And my commitment is to do it till my last breath. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to share a little bit with you. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, my relatives. Bye.
Thank you, Phil. Well, there's much to be said and nothing to be said. I think that, Phil, you spoke well. And I would like now to introduce Kathy Borsa. Kathy is the mother of 2 sons and a passionate educator, teaching the entire spectrum of students from elementary school through high school to English as an additional language for adults. Raised in a Catholic home, she was drawn to the quest for a more universal perspective, which led her to her current journey as a member of the Baha'i community in Whitehorse. Kathy will provide a Baha'i perspective on our question this evening. Welcome, Kathy.
There, got it. Thank you, Stu. And thank you so much, Phil, for such a heartfelt message, sharing of the traditional First Nation views of their belief in the Creator and our connectedness to this world. So, I just want to start as a Baha'i. Of course, the Baha'i teachings, as many of you know, are based on the prophet founder Baha'u'llah, which means the glory of God. And his teachings come at a time, as have been reflected, when we are in great need of a message of the oneness of mankind, and that there is one Creator, which the indigenous people have always told us, and that all of us here and all the faiths we represent are really from the Creator, who has never left us alone, and including lesser maybe prophets that we didn't know so much about that were sent to the indigenous people. So I'm very grateful to be here, and yes, I totally agree to come together in such a unifying spirit is just a wonderful thing. And I hope to share my thoughts, not so much the Baha'i perspective on gaining strength through adversity. I'm going to touch very briefly on three parts because I'll definitely try to keep to my time. One is to start just briefly on the suffering of all the prophets of God, whichever faith that you follow. If you look closely to the lives of the prophets, we sometimes refer to them as messengers of God. You know, they all suffered greatly. You look at the life of Moses or Buddha or Muhammad, certainly Baha'u'llah himself, 40 years in suffering in exile and persecution. And every one of them suffered so greatly to bring us these Muhammad. I can't get into all the, I've tried to learn more about these, to bring us this guidance, from God to help us along, to help us, be able to overcome adversities. So my talk, I'll be sharing mostly quotes from the Baha'i writings, a few of my own comments. And I hope that you find these, inspiring, a little uplifting for the times that we live in. So my first quote here is by Abdu'l-Baha, and he was the son of Baha'u'llah, who suffered alongside his father for 40 years or more. God sent all his prophets into the world with one aim, to sow in the hearts of men love and goodwill. And for this great purpose, they were willing to suffer and to die. All the sacred books were written to lead and direct man into the ways of love and unity. And a quote by Baha'u'llah, should you acquaint yourself with the indignities heaped upon the prophets of God and apprehend the true causes of the objections voiced by their oppressors, you will surely appreciate the significance of their position. Moreover, the more closely you observe the denials of those who have opposed the messengers or manifestations of the divine attributes, the firmer will be your faith in the cause of God. So the reason I wanted to bring this aspect of adversity is that, we all have fallen in love with the messenger of God, whether it be as a Moses or Christ or Muhammad or Buddha, and we know how much they suffered. And when we know somebody has suffered so much to bring us, our love for them, then it helps us endure the little suffering and sometimes great suffering that we are given in our life, everybody a different degree. This next quote is actually Baha'u'llah calling on a follower to not forget the suffering of these messengers, including himself. O Ahmed, forget not my bounties while I am absent. Remember my days during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. And be thou so steadfast in my love that thy heart shall not waver, even if the swords of the enemies rain blows upon thee, and all the heavens and the earth arise against thee. Rely upon God, thy God, and the Lord of thy fathers. So in our times of great trials and, adversity, it would help us to think how much these great prophets suffered to bring us these beautiful teachings. Now, secondly, I'd like to turn to how adversity like Phil was sharing, leads to great personal growth, you know, as long as we turn to the Creator and ask for his help. So this is a series of quotes that I'll go through by, again, Abdul Baha and Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith. The first one. Physical pain is a necessary accompaniment of the human existence, and as such is unavoidable. As long as there will be life on earth, there will also be suffering in various forms and degrees. But suffering, although an inescapable reality, can nevertheless be utilized as a means for the attainment of happiness. Grief and sorrow do not come to us by chance. They are sent to us by the divine mercy for our own perfecting. We must realize that everything which happens is due to some wisdom, and that nothing happens without a reason. And this, I think, is one of my favorite quotes about how, you know, the suffering that whether, you know, at the hands of other people or from our own mistakes and bad choices, but how it polishes us, it helps us to become, you know, hopefully a better person as long as we turn to God. So this is a beautiful quote by Abdul Baha. And I need a little sip of water here. The mind and spirit of man advance when he is tried by suffering. The more the ground is plowed, the better the seed will grow, the better the harvest will be. Just as the plow furrows the earth deeply, purifying it of weeds and thistles, so suffering and tribulation free man from the petty affairs of this worldly life until he arrives at a state of complete detachment. His attitude in this world will be that of divine happiness. Man is, so to speak, unripe. The heat of the fire of suffering will mature him, and you will find, look back to the past, and you will find that the greatest men have suffered most. And one last, what I found a beautiful quote on
Kathy, if you can wind up.
Pardon?
If you can wind up, it's been 8 minutes, but
Yeah.
go ahead and finish.
Oh, okay. I will finish up here. So yes, I will end with just a quick about the state of the world at this time and how the suffering that mankind has gone through is really bringing us to a point of leading us to the point where man can become unified. And again, we look back in the world and all the suffering that has gone on, and now is the time for this message, you know, of the oneness of mankind, and we have suffered a lot as mankind to come to this point. So unification of the whole of mankind is the hallmark of the stage which human society is now approaching. Unity of family, of tribe, of city, state, and nation have been successfully attempted and fully established. World unity is the goal towards which a harassed humanity is striving. Nation building has come to an end. A world growing to a maturity must abandon and recognize the oneness and wholeness of human relationships and establish once and for all the machinery that can best incarnate this fundamental principle of its life. O God, refresh and gladden my spirit, purify my heart, illumine my powers. I lay all my affairs in thy hand. Thou art my guide and my refuge. I will no longer be sorrowful and grieved. I will be a happy and joyful being. O God, I will no longer be full of anxiety, nor will I let trouble harass me. I will not dwell on the unpleasant things of life. Thank you. I'm sorry I went over.
No, that's
It's
all right.
a big subject.
Yes, and certainly in the context of a war that we're having to live through right now, the unity of all humanity is certainly something that we can all affirm as a desirable goal. Thank you, Kathy. We are going to depart from the schedule a little bit now. It turns out that one of our speakers, Jansing Kotli, has microphone issues. So we can see him, but we can't hear him. And so in his place, and immediately following Kathy, I've been asked if I would introduce Harpreet Singh, who is standing in for Jansing Kotli. So I will leave it over to him to make himself known to you a little bit. I have no information, but I pass the floor now to Harpreet Singh. And thank you very much for stepping in at the last moment.
No worries. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And of course, like we have an extra tire in the car, and whenever we need it, it is used. So here I am in place of Jansing Kotli. Of course, I don't have that much of wisdom as Mr. Kotli, but right now I've been asked to speak on finding strength in adversity. That's the topic, probably what I'm going to speak on. And I would request you, I don't have a watch in front of me. So because once my 8 minutes are finished, I've been just told to speak for 8 minutes. If you could please jump in. Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be present over here and talk to you on this important topic. From the Sikhism perspective, when we talk about adversity, life consists of good times and challenging times. And we have been told to be in a state of, it's called in Punjabi, Chardi Kala, which means always be in a state of upbeing. Once we have that kind of attitude, because nothing is good or bad, it's a reaction to something which makes us understand that something is bad for us. And probably from our perspective, it might be bad for us, but when we see from a greater perspective, in whichever power we believe in, definitely sometimes it is said that if one door closes, hundreds open. So similarly in life, if something happens, Sikhism tells us to accept it as Lord's grace. Once you develop that kind of attitude, then nothing impacts you, whether it is good times or bad times. You just be in the flow. And once you start being in the flow, you understand what is life all about. Of course, as there is day, there has to be night. So similarly, as there is night, there has to be day. And we always say there is light at the end of the tunnel. So basically, if we are facing some crisis, we are going through some crisis, it is our utmost duty to face that with a lot of, I would say, strength. And strength comes only when we have faith in something. And faith gives us that power to face that challenge. And adversity is a time when generally we are having low self-esteem. We are losing faith, not only in the power that we believe in, but in ourselves also. So we are at a low ebb at that time. But if we just keep on remembering the teachings of our masters, that is the time when you get hope, when you get encouragement, and that gives you further strength to come forward and start facing that problem or challenge what you are going through. There have been many instances from history when we see that people who didn't lose hope, who faced that challenge, that adversity, they came triumphantly. Yes, they might have got some setbacks at that time, and probably for some time they were down, but it is always said that the person of faith cannot be put down forever, because he or she knows that my strength is my Lord, my God, whoever one's faith is in. And Sikhism tells us to be in that state, as I said in the beginning, the state of Chardi Kala, to be in that state of optimal optimism, that everything is happening for your good. So these are challenging times, what we are seeing all over the world. And especially right now, the war that we are seeing has put a lot of pressure on the people who are living over there. Even in Canada also, we find that racial tensions are on the rise, inflation is on the rise, people are losing faith, churches are being sold at a level when never ever it happened before. And the youngsters do not want to go into religious places because they say that, I always call our youngsters that they observe us, they see us, So when there's a difference between our talk and how we behave, they lose faith that you as people of believing in some religion, it is not making that impact. We say war is bad, but we fight it out. We have anti-war rallies, but rather the name is such that it should be pro-peace rally. And as Mother Teresa used to say that he has never ever gone to any anti-war rally. Why? Because she said the connotation of that, the wording of that has a negative impact. So similarly, if we change our attitude and we have that positive approach to life, we will face adversity with strength. We will not that challenge overpower us. And our attitude will make the difference. And we will follow that path in which we know that we can come forward and provide some solutions. As I was talking about the Russian-Ukrainian war, we are seeing how people are being killed, how civilians are being pounded. Now, whichever side we belong to, if we are from the West, then of course we have our explanations for that. We try to justify everything. And of course, everybody tries to justify everything from their perspective. But if we say that unbiased, there is nothing unbiased in this world today. Whatever our affiliations are, whatever our thought is, we try to bring it and then try to justify it. And that is the reason probably why we shout for peace, but peace is not to be seen. Because from our homes, we have lost that peace. We give priority to everything else except for ourselves. How much time are we willing to invest on ourselves? We try to please everyone else except ourselves, whether it is physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. We live in a developed country, but unfortunately, the statistics which we see over here are alarming as compared to the developing countries. If we see that assaults on women are on the rise, it is not just in the developing countries. In developed countries also, it's the same statistic. Every 4 hours in Canada, women is assaulted. So whereas in a developing country, if we see the statistics, it might be 6 or 7 hours. So what difference is there? The mentality is the same. While we may be living in some separate country where we claim ourselves to be developed, but our mentality is not changing because our homes are breaking. At homes, we don't have that trust, that integrity, that homogeneous outlook towards life. Everybody's talking about, me, and me only. And because of that, our ego, the 5 vices, which probably every religion talks about, lust, anger, greed, attachment, and especially in the Eastern culture, a lot of emphasis is laid on this. And in Sikhism, the focus is try to control these vices. We talk about the 10 commandments, and that also is the same thing. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And similarly,
that's 8 minutes, just so you know.
Thank you. So basically, I would like to sum it up and say that if we have faith in ourselves, it is we who can change our perspective towards life. And once our perspective gets changed, everything else will change. And we need to work on ourselves because everybody wants to change the world, but we do not want to change ourselves. So thank you very much. Let's start on this work. And I congratulate you for organizing these kind of programs where we get an opportunity to listen to each other and learn from each other and implement that. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, Harpreet, both for your words and your willingness to step in at the last moment. And so now we will turn to Roger Horner. Roger, like Kathy, started out in a low-key Christian family, but early on began a search for a direct experience of reality, a journey that led him initially to Sikhism and eventually to Buddhism. He continues his study with Lama Padma Drame Norbu, and he lived until recently in Whitehorse. He now lives in Victoria, but he kindly agreed to join us this evening. Roger will provide a Buddhist perspective to the answer of our question, which I'll be very interested to hear. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you, Stuart. It's a pleasure to be here. It's lovely to follow on Phil's comments about sort of finding his own strength, his own sense of being, and coming to his spiritual path in that way, and for Kathy's words on oneness, and for our last speaker's name, who I can't pronounce or remember, his comment about our mentality not changing, and that we really need to address ourselves to adversity and somehow change, do better. And so, the Buddhist teachings can be summarized in 3 statements. Do not one unwholesome deed, but gather a wealth of virtue. Purify your mind in its entirety. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, maybe it would be good for you just to repeat those 3 again, if you would, Roger, because it was a little faint.
Yeah. Do not one unwholesome deed, but gather a wealth of virtue. Purify your mind in its entirety. This is the teaching of the Buddha. And what I'd like to focus on here today a little bit is the first 2 statements have to deal with our conduct in the outer world, and the third statement about purifying the mind is really at the core of Buddhism, and it speaks to the issue that the previous speakers raised about our mentality not changing. So I'm coming at this talk through, with that in mind. Years ago, my Tibetan teacher, Chögyam Rinpoche, taught me that oneness is the most sacred concept. He taught that everything arises interdependently, and as a result of this interdependence, no thing or no being has a self-existing identity. Every being and everything is in relationship with everything else. And this is the nature, the beauty and the disaster of oneness. Another core understanding of Buddhism is that everything is impermanent, that we live in a world of constant change. If things aren't going well, we don't want things to change. And if they are not going well, we may want them to change in a certain way. Because we live in a world of constant change, we tend to cycle between experiences of hope and fear. There's a Tibetan expression, they say, they live with yaks, and they say, we live on the horns of hope and fear. The experience of impermanence is the source of our suffering and our adversity. Mm-hmm. So how do we find strength in adversity? Buddhism taught that a sense of peace and refuge can be found in our heart-mind, regardless of the conditions we find ourselves in. To come to a deep understanding of the nature of mind, he taught the practice of meditation to find that place of clarity. To find that place of clarity which is unchanging and which experiences everything. I wrote a little poem that expresses this. It's a long poem, but let your mind a mirror be, rest in your heart what all you see. Love lived is life's continuity. And so let your mind a mirror be, rest in your heart what all you see. Love lived is life's continuity. At the heart of finding strength in Buddhism is the wisdom of knowing deeply from your own experience the nature of your own mind. This sense of knowing is called inner refuge. So in Buddhism, this sense of having refuge in the knowing of your own being is really the source of your inner peace, which you can then bring into the world. As this knowing deepens, we also come to an understanding of our suffering in the face of constantly changing conditions. Seeing our own capacity for wisdom I thought we had 5 minutes. Seeing our own capacity for wisdom and our experience of suffering, we also see that all beings suffer in the same way. And so our compassion arises in ourselves and for others at the same time.
Mm.
To deeply understand the nature of our own mind and its capacity for wisdom, and sometimes referred to as equanimity, and to find this understanding of equanimity and compassion, it gives rise to our compassion for all beings. And this really is the source of our strength. It's really the unity, the deep knowing of the suffering we experience in our own mind in constant change that everyone is facing, that gives us the capacity to be compassionate for other beings who may be going through deep suffering and acting in ways that are unkind to ourselves, unkind to others, but they are in their own suffering. And we must, since we are all in our own suffering, we need to work at purifying our own mind so that we can refine our response to our own experience. From the perspective of the sacred concept of oneness, because in the conditions of extreme adversity that we are experiencing now, it is important not to blame and divide, but to seek solutions to the problems together. So, perhaps, in the Muslim faith, they talk about jihad, and and I don't really know how to explain that, but from a Buddhist perspective, this sort of war that goes on is a war within. It's a war of purification of the nature of our own mind, so that we can respond with wisdom and compassion on a moment-to-moment basis, no matter what situation we're experiencing.
That's pretty close to 8 minutes, Roger, and you filled our cup with some pretty good ideas.
Okay, I'll leave it right there.
Yeah, I think you've done well, and thank you very much for your words. And so, following Roger, I would like to invite Bev Brazier to join us. Bev is the pastor of Whitehorse United Church and a widely recognized leader in the community. And as she is frequently heard to say, a lover of life in the Yukon. She's a passionate advocate for the positive changes faith communities can make, having studied in Winnipeg, Vancouver, and Bangalore, Maine, and worked in several places in Canada, as well as a short stint in Australia. Bev will provide a liberal Christian perspective to our question. Welcome, Bev. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here, and I come today with profound gratitude, and just gratitude, which is in itself a source of strength in the times of adversity. I'm thankful for this land, the traditional territory of the Kwanlun First Nation, the Taungwachan Council. I'm thankful for you, Rizwan, and your community making this happen year after year. I'm thankful for every day that I get to live on this earth. It's so beautiful and it's so broken. And I'm thankful for you, because what gives me strength in adversity are things like this. I don't think we should ever underestimate the power of what we do here. Dave and I will be representing Christianity tonight. I'm really happy to be doing that because, as you know, Christianity is a pretty big tent. And within that tent of followers of Jesus, there are lots of differing expressions of that. And I also need to say what I say often, and that's that as Christians, we come historically to any conversation with other religions. We come with blood on our hands. There are parts of our history and parts, God forgive us, of our present reality that are shameful, and for which the only right response is to ask forgiveness and then to live as though we mean it. So we're here, and before us is the question on how to find strength in adversity. In Christianity, we live out our lives in ceremony, and today, this very day, in our tradition, it's called Ash Wednesday, a day when we remember and rehearse, and we take into ourselves the journey that Jesus took to the cross and beyond. Not all Christian traditions mark this day, and that's okay, but for those who do, it's a service where we take upon our bodies, either on our foreheads or sometimes on our hands, the mark of the cross in ashes. And we hear the words, "Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return." And to me, that's a way to find strength. Why? Because it reminds me of what should be obvious, but I keep forgetting. As I get older, I keep being reminded more often, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. We're going back to the earth. And that's not a threat. That's a promise, because we're part of this sacred earth. This is holy ground, and we are made of the same stuff as all creation. We're not apart from the creation. We're not somehow over it, managing it. We're not just passing through on the way to some heaven that has nothing to do with here and now. There's a oneness to all of this, and a oneness to everything that lives. And that, in the ecological crisis in which we find ourselves, is a good starting place for a source of strength. In the second creation story, in the book of Genesis, God makes humans, Adam, humans, from the earth. I understand, I don't read Hebrew that well, but Rick, you can, anyway. I understand that it's a pun in Hebrew, and essentially it's like humans from the humus. That's as close as I can get. You know, we're made of clay and mud and filled with the breath and the image of our Creator. And that is awesome. That's a great starting place, a source of strength. That's who we are. And Ash Wednesday comes around every year, just in case we forgot, to remind us and give us that gift of memory. So the flow and the rhythm and the ceremony of our church year is like that. So I'm making a big advertisement here, a big commercial for the church year. Just for example, at the coldest, darkest time of year in this hemisphere, it seems like nature's dead. We celebrate a birth, and with lights. Most people do, but that's part of it. And then in the springtime, when new life is all around and there's increasing light, we walk with Jesus to his death. The faith, in my opinion, has a genius for saying that whatever's going on right now, the opposite is also true. And it offers us and builds in us a tolerance for and an expectation of complexity and paradox. Because when adversity comes, I think one of our biggest troubles as humans is that when we're under pressure, what we look for is simple, single answers, and we'll buy anything as long as we don't have to think too hard when things are bad. But living in community, in the flow of the church year, builds in us a capacity for paradox and complication. So when answers aren't clear and aren't obvious, and when times are hard, we know that that's part of life. That's a part of life of faith and not some personal failing. It offers us a capacity to live with paradox, and we really, really need that, to hold two things at once, as if to say, always remember that the opposite is also true. I went to a symposium, I think it was called, maybe some of you did, a few years ago here at the Kwan Dun Center on factors that contribute to good mental health. 2 days, experts are talking. I'm taking notes. Factors that lead to good mental health. And here's what they said: a sense of agency, that you have power to make decisions. They said a sense of personal worth, a connection with others, a sense of community, belonging, a feeling that you're not alone, a purpose larger than your own life to which you can give your life, a connection to your ancestors. And they talked about music, what it does to your brain, like in a physical way, and also to your soul. So I'm sitting there listening and I'm thinking, gee, where could a person get all that? Because to me, that is describing church at our best. And you know, we're not always at our best, but at church at its best, we're connected to one another. We're connected to the earth and the great cloud of witnesses that have gone before us. We're called by God through Christ to be agents of light and peace and justice and reconciliation in the world. We have a sense of history, a perspective, because we know if you read the scriptures, whatever adversity we're going through, we've been through this before. We've been through this before, and God's Spirit kind of broods over the face of that water. And music that gives us expression when words don't do it, when speech falters, and when it's all too much, the capacity for wonder. In the face of what God is up to in Jesus and others, but for me, in Jesus, in the face of what God is up to, these things give me strength. And so do you, my friends, and I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Bev. Wow, there's a lot of really good stuff here, and we'll have a chance perhaps to have a bit of a conversation at the end, because I'm sure that all of you have questions and things that you'd like to add to this. But for now, I'd like to welcome Maulana Umran ul Haq Bhatti to speak. And Maulana Bhatti is a missionary with the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jama'at in Canada. And having studied theology and comparative religions in Canada, he's worked in Ghana, Atlantic Canada, Toronto, Calgary, and Jamaica before coming to Vancouver, where he is the Imam of the Baitur Rahman Mosque in Delta. And this evening, Maulana Bhatti is going to provide a Muslim perspective to the question we have this evening. Welcome, Maulana Bhatti.
Thank you. Thank you once again for the introduction. As always, I will start with the short recitation of the Holy Quran. May peace and blessings be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the ever merciful. The verses that I am referring to regarding the topic that we have, and many great speakers spoke before me on this topic. So there are some verses in the Holy Quran which speak directly regarding this topic. Chapter 2 of the Holy Quran, verses 154 to 158, it says that, O ye who believe, seek help with patience and prayer. Surely Allah is with the steadfast. And in the end it says that, and we will try you with something of fear and hunger and loss of wealth and lives and fruits, but give glad tidings to the patient who, when the misfortune overtakes them, say, surely to Allah we belong, and to him shall we return. It is these on whom are blessings from their Lord and mercy, and it is these who are rightly guided. Now, when we talk about adversity and rising against adversity or coming out of adversity, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, adversity means that a state of instance of seriousness or continued difficulty or misfortune. Keeping this definition in mind, because it will come in handy when I will go through my presentation and how this is applied in many of the life history and lessons that we learn from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So the verses which I recited earlier describe two key characteristics of a believer. Number one, that they exhibit patience and seek help with prayer at the time of adversity. Patience implies several meanings. Firstly, it means that one should refrain from whining and complaining when faced with any kind of hardship. You should endow the difficulty with fortitude. Laminating in a way of a difficulty can sometimes result in the expression of such emotions which are unbecoming of a believer. Secondly, patient means to remain steadfast and resolute. Thirdly, it means to remain firmly grounded in the commandments of God. Patient also means that one should make every effort to shield oneself from what God has forbidden. In a nutshell, steadfastness entails that one has the quality to face any kind of trials and tribulations with strength, courage, and resilience, and that he prostrates toward God with absolute conviction and firm faith. The second quality mentioned in the verses which I recited earlier is that one should seek help with prayer and supplication. What this signifies is that one increases his fervor in the 5 daily ritual prayers, increases his supplications, pay close attention to his duties of faith. Now, one should remember that all of these types of adversities are temporary. When a believer hands over his complete trust and faith to God and relies solely on his extensions, then in face of every trial, he shall meet with success, and his relationship with God will keep on increasing. And God will continue, God will come to his succor of his servant as a mother tries to help her child in a way and any way that she can. Now, the prerequisite, however, is that one should truly discourage one's duties towards Allah and express absolute submission to his will and exhibit all the qualities of steadfastness and perseverance. Now, I want to take you back 1400 years ago. In terms of location, we can go around the Arab Peninsula. A young boy named Muhammad, peace be upon him, was born in 570 AD. Before his birth, his father passes away. At the age of 6, his mother passes away. Then he's passed on to his grandfather. He too, at the age of 8, passes away. Finally, one of his uncles decides to take care of him and bring him under his protection. In those very early years of his life, his most beloved and caring family members are taken away from him. He was raised in a city which showed no mercy, a city that was prone to crime, sin, and warfare. Meccans showed no sympathy, love, or affection to anyone. In Mecca, this young boy was known as As-Siddiq, which means the truthful, and Al-Amin, which means the trustworthy. His troubles and difficulties did not end there. They continued when he proclaimed, "There is none worthy of worship except God, and that he is one, and that I am the messenger of God." This message and new religion did not sit well with the Meccans. Hence, as with all true and divine prophets, persecution and opposition began. His most devoted and loyal followers bore all types of pain and affliction. His close relatives cut all sorts of ties and relationship with him. The only relationship he was concerned and worried about was the relationship between God and man. The opposition and persecution grew to new heights. With this, the Muslims were commanded to migrate to Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, under a Christian king who would grant protection to these asylum seekers. Persecution became more and more serious and more unbearable. The conflict had become more serious than ever. The Meccans convened another big meeting. At this, they resolved an all-out boycott of the Muslims. The Meccans were to have no normal dealings with Muslims. They were neither to buy from them nor to sell anything to them. Without money, without means, and without reserves, the Prophet's family and relations suffered untold hardship under this blockade. For 3 years, there was no slacking of it. When the Meccans did not accept this message, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, took his message and went to a nearby city called Taif. Even in that small town, he was met with opposition and rejection to a degree that street boys and mischief makers threw rocks on him, so much so that he was drenched in blood from head to toe when he exited the city. To deal with constant hardship and rejection can wear a person down, but the dedication, resilience, and zeal which was shown by our Prophet was not shown by any other, all the divine prophets. When the prophets finally migrated to Medina to seek a safe life and a life free of oppression and persecution, the Meccans, upon seeing the Muslims at peace and contentment, was worrisome. The Meccans waged war against the Muslims in order to put an end to the message and the messenger. They brought 1,000 skilled armed forces and courageous men to fight 313 farmers, which were untrained and ill-equipped. 3-to-1 ratio was the ratio at that time when the Muslims went to war, not to only defend Islam, but to defend religion of freedom of religion and freedom of conscience. In December 629 AD, when the Holy Prophet of Islam marched towards the Meccan with 10,000 faithful servants, this day, as described by the Prophet of Islam, is not the day of slaughter, it is a day of forgiveness. While riding his camel and entering the city of Makkah, he was full of humility and meekness, so much so that his beard was touching the bareback of the camel he was riding. One would imagine 13 years of severe persecution in Makkah, where you are pushed to the brink of starvation, your loved ones are butchered before your eyes, your loyal companions are put through extreme torment, you are engaged in defenseless wars, that you would enter the city as a king who would seek revenge in a blink of an eye. But history speaks of the mercy, compassion, and forgiveness shown by the Prophet of Islam. When we fast forward to early 1800s,
Maulana Bhatti, that is 8 minutes.
Okay, all right. We'll wrap it up with just one last quotation from the that I was continuing on. When we fast forward to 1800 years, a devout follower of him, his most ardent desire and lover, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, who claimed to be the latter-day Messiah and Imam Mahdi, which foretold in the Holy Quran and all other major religions. He founded the community in 1889, and 40 handful followers accepted him at that time. And now, by the grace of God, we are established in over than 210 countries with tens of millions of followers all around the world. And he came to end all religious wars and unite mankind with the Creator, and all types of warfare that many speakers before have talked as well. So I know I don't want to go over my time limit with this. I thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak to a distinguished audience and all those who are joining us on YouTube and on Zoom as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maulana Bhatti. And there are certainly some themes in what you said that echo what has been said earlier, and will give us some things to talk about at the end. So our next speaker is Rick Karp, who is, Rick's a very familiar figure in Whitehorse as the long-serving, 14 years, president of the Whitehorse Chamber of Commerce. Less well-known is Rick's role as the religious authority for the local Jewish community. He has also been a frequent contributor to the World Religions Conference. Rick will provide a Jewish perspective on tonight's question. Welcome, Rick, and thank you for what you're going to offer to us.
Good. Thank you, Stu. And thank you to Rizwan and his community for organizing this event. It's been really quite something so far. Now, I've got to start, as I have each year, to mention that I am not a rabbi, so I don't have that expertise. But let me get started. Each Saturday in synagogues around the world during the Shabbat services, there is a reading from a section of the Torah. This is called the Parsha, the Torah reading. It is very interesting to me that the Torah readings of the last 2 weeks are meaningful in our discussion today, as they set out a path, a way for us to deal with the difficulties we're experiencing. The first Torah reading, which we studied 2 weeks ago, is titled Kitisa, which loosely translated means lift up your head, see what is going on. It is one of the most important Torah readings as it tells the story of Moses going up Mount Sinai to be with Hashem. Moses spent 40 days on Mount Sinai, and it was during this time that we received the Torah and the 10 Commandments. Kitisa is also a sad story of the golden calf and how fragile we all are in our day-to-day lives and can easily turn away from Hashem. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai, when he saw the golden calf, he knew what had happened, and he was very angry with the people of Israel. He smashed the tablets that contained the 10 Commandments, and he destroyed the golden calf. There is a wonderful rabbi in the Calgary Chabad Lubavitcher synagogue, Rabbi Matusoff, who explained in a video to his congregation. He said, it was only 40 days that Moses was away, but the people were expecting him to return more quickly, so they got distracted, confused, felt abandoned, and as such turned elsewhere to try and meet their needs, something physical on which to focus their attention. So a group created the golden calf and claimed that this is your God. People need leadership. They need something, someone to follow. And this is one lesson that we learn from the Torah, that religious leadership must help to point the way, to create balance in society, to fill the void. Because some people in positions of power have taken advantage of that void. As such, we see the abuses, the confusion, the adversity that exists in our world today. Leaders lead as long as their followers follow, and at times they follow misdirection, such as the golden calf in the Torah reading. Rabbi Matusoff tells us it was a short 40 days when Moses returned. The rabbi asked us to think about it. After 2 years, many people have been led in the wrong direction and have come to believe false statements. 2 years, not 40 days, without knowing, without having answers, which has led us to so much diversity and turmoil. But it is not just the Torah that deals with this adversity. In Jewish philosophical writings, it is discussed that the coming of the 7th millennium is the Messianic age, and that will be a time of peace, of unity. In the Jewish calendar, we are nearing the end of the 6th millennium, and soon the beginning of the 7th, as this is the year 5872 in the Jewish calendar. The philosophical writings predict that these years will be a time of adversity. They tell us so. They predict that what we are experiencing is preparing us to discover the way ahead and will give us the strength we need to create a new era. Kitisa, the first Torah reading, means lift up your head to see, to hear, and discover the goodness, the kindness, and the unity in all mankind. Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, went back to Mount Sinai, and Hashem gave him the 10 Commandments once again. Kitisa, lift your heads, stand tall, and trust that all will be well. Look forward. Baruch Hashem. Thank you, Hashem, for giving us the Torah and the 10 Commandments to help guide us. So what is that the Torah actually telling us? What is the point of all of this, of studying religious scriptures, of being a believer? Hashem tells us it is to gather together, all of us, trust each other, and work together to make change. Rabbi Matusoff tells us that the Torah readings are instructing us that regardless of all the craziness going on and the turmoil around us, that we have to keep our heads held high, stand tall, and together look ahead. And most importantly, we must work as one, and we need to do mitzvot, good deeds, and recognize the good in others. Look around and find the positive things of the past years and stand together to keep focused. Kitisa, lift up your heads to look ahead. The Torah reading from last week is called Vayakel, which means just the same, come together and act as one, supporting each other. In this Torah reading, we are told how Moses gathered all the people of Israel together to celebrate each other, to heal the nation, and to be one, not just for the people of Israel, but for all of us. Look for and find the best in others. March is the time of regeneration, of spring, when the trees bloom, a time of renewal, of happiness. March is also the celebration of Purim. The Purim festival is a Jewish holiday that's all about unity, family, and togetherness. The story of Purim is about being triumphant over adversity. Ki tisa, lift up your heads. Vayakel, come together. So the Torah tells us to stand tall, to come together, to rely on each other. And therein lies the strength we need to overcome diversity. And that the idea of the Messianic age will start when we recognize that we are all one, that we are all equal. And this will guide us to respect each other and work together to make a better world and prepare us for an age of peace and harmony. So, from the Jewish perspective, from the Torah readings, we will find the strength to overcome the diversity we are experiencing, and that we have to respect each other, to stand up in unity and raise our heads to see the good in each other and have a positive view for the future. Thank you. I can't hear you, Stu. I can't hear you.
Excellent, Rick. Thank you very much.
Okay.
That was a gift to all of us.
Okay, thank you.
Now, I think the next speaker was to be Jian Singh Kotli. And as I mentioned earlier, he had problems with his microphone. I saw him coming online and it looked as though he had audio. Jian Singh, are you there and able to speak to us? It seems not, and that's fine. It's okay. We're just sorry to miss your wise words as a multi-faith activist in your 80s now, with a remarkable life, including conquering the gross grind 130 times. I'm sorry that we're going to miss you this evening, but perhaps we can at least see you at the end. And so with that, I will move to our final speaker, Dave Anderson. Dave is a born and raised Whitehorse resident and a lifelong member of Riverdale Baptist Church. He has served in both technical and leadership roles at that church, where he is currently one of the elders. Dave will provide an evangelical Christian perspective on tonight's question. Welcome, Dave. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for the welcome. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
I want to start by thanking the organizers of the conference for allowing me to present a second Christian perspective. Bev and I spoke initially about sharing a single time slot and about the potential awkwardness of having Christianity listed twice on our agenda. The organizers very graciously invited us both to present, and I'm thankful for that. And I just want to acknowledge that graciousness on your behalf. One of the benefits of going last in a thing like this is how remarkable it is for me how much of what I had prepared to say has already been said. I hardly need to share what I had prepared, because the themes that I wanted to speak on have I think been echoed already. And so I hope that what I have to say will resonate with you all. I acknowledge that you may describe it in different terms, but it strikes me as quite remarkable how much common ground there may be. I want to start by talking a bit about the Christian notion of heaven. And I thought to do that because Jesus actually spent a lot of his time and energy talking about the kingdom of heaven. It's the main theme in his teachings. It's a bit of an odd topic, given that I'm supposed to be talking about adversity, but I hope that I'll make it make some sense by the time I wrap up here. I'm going to talk about a perspective on heaven because, as Bev acknowledged, Christianity is a wide tent, and there are many views under that tent. And I don't want to represent what I have to say as the Christian view. This is my Christian view on it. Heaven, in my view, and as Bev acknowledged, I think, is not just thought of as a place we go to when we die. It's not just a place in the afterlife, and it's certainly not in Christian thought a place where, you know, we're sitting on clouds strumming harps and consorting with the angels. Jesus never described it in those terms, and I think it is better to think of heaven, of the kingdom of heaven, as a state or a condition. And in the way Jesus spoke about the kingdom of heaven, it's apparent, I think, that he had in mind that it is a state or a condition that is approaching us, and that we, in some sense, are drawing near to as well. Christians have always believed and hoped in an afterlife, in participation in the kingdom of heaven after they die. I share that hope. I hope that if I'm not around to experience the fullness of the kingdom of heaven before I leave this earth, that I may have an opportunity after I die to participate in it. But as I said, it's not only a notion of the afterlife. Heaven is a condition that, in our view, is something that we are approaching even now. It is something that is drawing near to us here on earth. What sort of a state or condition it is? I think heaven is most properly and deeply characterized as a state of ultimate love, of harmony, and of peace. And if I'm not misstepping, our friends on the conference may be able to correct me. It might be a state that can be described as shalom or salam. And I'd be interested in hearing a bit more about whether I'm using those terms properly. It's a state of harmony and peace. And I think there are three different aspects to that. The kingdom of heaven is characterized in one way as a state of perfect relationships amongst human beings. It's a state where we as humans learn to acknowledge and respect and even love one another. A state where we turn from pursuing our own selfish needs, our own desires, our own benefit, and we turn our minds and our attention to the need of our neighbors. And a state where each of us is doing that, and we learn to live together in a type of harmony that we've never yet experienced. So heaven is characterized by harmony amongst human beings. The second aspect is maybe a little unusual to hear. It maybe doesn't get emphasized by Christians as much as it needs to, but I think it is also characterized by harmony, the same kind of peace and coexistence between humanity and the rest of the created order, the rest of the natural world. Phil spoke on this a bit from the traditional indigenous perspective, and it resonates with me. We will not participate in heaven while we are still exploiting the natural world primarily for our own gain. Heaven is characterized by a harmony between us and the rest of the created order. Our scriptures tell us that God sent Jesus to us in part because he loves the whole world, not just because he loves the humans in the world. We are told in our scriptures that at the end of times, the trees themselves will clap their hands and the stones will cry out in praise. No doubt that's allegorical. Trees don't have hands to clap with, but there is some great truth there about us finding harmony with the natural created order. And that's a component of the kingdom of heaven. Finally, of course, heaven is characterized by harmony between mankind and his creator and God, harmony between us and the creator of the world. That at both an individual level and I would say a collective level. It's characterized by me finding a right relationship with God, but characterized also by us as mankind coming to recognize our Creator and entering into a right relationship with Him. In our faith, we believe that a crucial step towards that right relationship with God is coming to know Jesus Christ, who He is, who He was, and who He is today. So here's why I wanted to talk about heaven. I reflected on my experiences over the last 2 years living through the COVID-19 pandemic, and it seems to me that the pandemic has, in some significant ways, actually drawn me and maybe us collectively heavenward. It has drawn us closer to heaven in some tangible ways. So I'll just talk through those briefly, and I'll go in reverse order what I just said. COVID has, I think, opened us up to a relationship with God in a unique way. And what I have in mind is that living through this pandemic has exposed to us our own vulnerability and our own weakness, our susceptibility to forces out there in the world that we simply cannot control. And the effect of that stark reminder is an attitude of humility and an attitude of recognition that we are not, after all, masters of the universe. We are vulnerable. And it is that vulnerable condition of humility that prepares us to recognize the greatness of a Creator and to recognize our great need for a relationship with God. COVID, I think, has hammered that point home for us in a lot of ways, at least for me. Secondly, sorry, Steve, or Stu, am I?
I was just telling you it was 8 minutes, but please, if you want to make a final point, go ahead.
I'll wrap up quickly. Second, I think COVID has moved us towards harmony with the natural world. And what I have in mind is the advances that we've made in science and the development of the vaccine and the ability that we've found to coexist with this virus. I know that in some views, the development of scientific approaches is viewed as anti-natural. I see it differently. I think that the vaccines come out of an incredible advance of science and scrutiny of natural elements in this world that we live. You cannot study something that closely without falling in love with it to a certain degree. What we've done through our scientific advances is learned a way to live in harmony with an aspect of our natural world. And I see that as an advance towards this piece of advancement, the kingdom. Finally, we've learned, I think, through the pandemic, more than anything else, that we need each other. We need each other desperately. This was a global phenomenon. It required a global response, and we globally stepped up to it. Humanity all across this planet was concerted in certain efforts to combat the virus and to protect one another and to survive through this thing. And I think that has been pretty much unprecedented. In my view, that is an astounding thing that we have accomplished. It's a beautiful thing, and it is a great step, if not a great leap, towards participation in the kingdom of heaven. That's exactly what it means for us collectively to bond together and to care for one another. The more recent world events, I think, have cast a shadow on that step, but it has not eclipsed it. I am, through the end of this pandemic, just full of hope and gratitude for these specific ways that over the last 2 years, I think we have approached the kingdom of heaven. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you to all of the speakers. It's my job not to repeat what everybody has said, clearly, but at least to say, what are some of the themes that I heard from a number of you? And I heard in the story of the Prophet Muhammad, blessed be his name, and from the Baha'i, that our revered guides suffered. And so the suffering which we experience now, whether it's the suffering on behalf of the terrible things that are happening in the conflict in the Ukraine, or the suffering that people experienced during the pandemic, or indeed, and not to be forgotten, the many millions of people suffering from the causes of climate change, or from the effects of climate change. So suffering is a reality, and I think for many of us that grew up in the post-war era, at least outside of our lives, we've largely led a life of peace and prosperity. And I think it's just important to realize that that was unusual. That's not the way that life usually is. And that was a point that Roger also made a point of raising from his faith tradition. The second point was the oneness of all. And, you know, that word rolls off our tongue really easily. And yet it's really profound. And both First Nations perspective, Buddhism, and the two Christian perspectives raise this point of saying how our relationship with the rest of creation, as well as with the rest of people, is important not just for an ethical reason, but it's a biological reality. We are all of us, the trees, the grass, and me, made of stardust. That's where it all came from. And it all had a single source. So there is a reality to that oneness, and it's such an important teaching at this point. And the last thing I wanted to pick up from what was said was the notion of lifting our heads. I think Maulana Bhatti talked about the Prophet Muhammad, blessed be his name, tips his head forward so that his beard touches the neck of the camel. Well, that humility was probably appropriate in that situation where he was coming in as a victor. But for us, as people suffering and in adversity, lifting our head, and as Prabhat said, doing good deeds, loving our neighbor, those two things, lifting our heads, living in the middle of the cyclone or the tornado that Phil talked about, living in the middle of it, in the peaceful spot, and focusing on doing good things. These are all ways that we can cope with adversity. So with that, that's all the comments I would like to make based on all the work which 8 people did to bring this evening to us. So again, I want to thank each one of them for the time and the sweat that they put into figuring out what they were going to say in only 8 minutes. I don't know, Rizwan, if there's further procedures that we need, or whether it's a time when we can have questions and answers. I pass it over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, time is our 7:30 and your 8:30 right now. Because we can have 15 minutes allocated for question if we have any. We need to see that. But I'll do my last job, saying thank you to all of you, especially you, moderator, and all the speaker panel. And not to forget, our national president for his support endorsing these events year after year. And also very much thankful to our regional president, Naim Lakhan, providing the support. He traveled also Whitehorse several times. I remember once we were traveling from here to Anchorage, Alaska with him to host only the event with him. And that was tremendous traveling time we had. So in the end, thank you to all those who are watching the program. I am finding a strength in these events by organizing, though it was quite a challenge to organize online event. I thought initially was much easier, but it's much harder than in-person event because of fact there are too many events are happening online. And asking viewers to please take time and spend your precious time for this also, it's also another challenge. Yeah, I know that in my community that there are so many events every day that asking member to join my event or our event, it's quite a challenge. But thank you to all of them. Find strength to spend the time with us. And I miss all you. I wanted to see you, all of you in person actually this year. With last 2 years, this pandemic has taught us many things. As Mr. David Anderson has said very well about the COVID, that we can learn so much from this, and that strength that we find from this to care about each other. From distance, we have united for the sake of, for love for each other. Understanding for some people, loneliness is very dangerous, and attracting them to come and attend this program, I'm pretty much sure they had found a strength from there. So I thank you very much for this topic also given by the National Head Office, one of the Vice President, recommending that and his advice are valuable. I'm thankful to him always for assistance and providing us a clear guidance. So may God bless all of you. I know that number of people are watching this program. I'm constantly receiving the messages that group of 12 are sitting, or 5 are sitting, or 2 are watching from the one TV, because YouTube is available on that. So so these messages are thankful to them that they are watching together. May God bless all of them for spending their time. In the end, we will find it by tomorrow exactly attendance because the traffic in YouTube, it comes and goes. People tend for half an hour, 15 minutes, whatever time they have. And because it's not obligation to them, they have to sit in a hall for 1.5 hours. So they're free to do so. So we will find attendance and I'll share with you. So in the end, thank you very much, all of you. May God bless all of you. I hope to see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. So now, moderators, up to you, back to you. The microphone is, and I wanted to close this with also the praying ceremony that we do. Thankful to God for providing the opportunity. Our tradition is that we request our original president lead us in silent prayer, and you may choose to do prayers the way you like. So if Mr. Stuart Clark allow us, we can do this.
Yes, of course. I think 100 minutes is long enough for anybody to watch something online, and we're a little over 100 minutes now. Yeah. And so I pass it back to you for the final closing.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you. God bless you all. I request the regional president to please lead us in silent prayer.
Thank you so much. Please join in the silent prayer, and as Van Sahib said, you can join according to your own way and practice. So silent prayer time. Ameen. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Love you all and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Create a wonderful future.
Thank you. Well, pleasure listening to you always.
I think we're on our way, Phil. And the world rising up to support Ukraine is, to me, a big step. The world is wanting world peace, and they're letting everybody know. So another wonderful step. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for